taking time for your health. The African American Wellness Watch. Trusted information for us, by us. Dr. Mike Lenore and other experts from around the country and around the world have the latest on how you and your family can get healthy and stay well. It's time for the African American Wellness Watch. Welcome to the Wellness Watch. I'm your moderator, George Strait. Since they say that you are what you eat, well, why not eat the best? But what is the best food to eat, and why is it so hard to continually do it all the time? It's a struggle, but that's okay. But you don't have to take my word for it. Let me introduce you to Mr. Tony Harris. Tony is a businessman, a jazz aficionado, and a good friend. But in many ways, he's just like you and me, someone who's fighting the good fight to eat and stay healthy. Tony, welcome to the program.
Thanks, George. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. So let's go back to the beginning. What kind of a diet did you have when you were growing up?
Well, my parents are from the South, so I had the traditional Southern diet of, collard greens and cornbread and pork and beef and everything from the rooter to the tutor, so they say.
Was there anything specific that happened? Was there a trigger that got you to say, you know what, maybe eating from the rooter to the tutor is not the best for me?
Well, to tell you the truth, a couple things happened. One, my mom was one of five siblings, and she outlived her siblings, but she died at the age of 64. And around that time, the comedian George Burns said a joke, something to the effect of, if I'd known I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. Well, my goal has always been to try and outlive my mom and her siblings. And I really began to believe that diet made a big difference. I moved to California back in 1980 and heard of a Dr. John McDougall. And McDougall talked a lot about how to eat on a vegetarian diet and the impacts it would have on longevity and good health. And I was really influenced by that. Being an engineer myself, I consider myself to be a data-driven person. And once I learned that the data on longevity and healthful outcomes was pretty much clear, I had to actually begin to pursue the data. So those two things, I think, really made all the difference for me.
So how hard was it to begin?
Well, it wasn't tough because my wife agreed to begin the journey with me, and since she prepared most of our meals when we were eating at home, it was pretty easy. Initially, we tried to go strict vegetarian, but since we eat out a lot, I travel a lot. It was really hard, particularly in the 80s, to find interesting meals eating out. All there was steamed vegetables primarily. But, over time, particularly here in California, there are a lot of options, both vegetarian and pescatarian. Nowadays, I consider myself to be a plant-based pescatarian with the objective.
And what does that mean?
Well, that means my primary diet is plant-based, but as a treat, we eat a lot of fish, a lot of seafood. And my goal is to become full vegetarian, but it's tough, because I love to eat, and I love the meats at fine dining.
So I guess that's really the next question. How hard is it to sort of stay on the wagon, if you will? And how do you deal with the fact that sometimes it's not always possible and you, quote unquote, fall off the wagon? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, it is possible. Again, living in California, we're lucky in that there's so many vegetarian and vegan and pescatarian options. So falling off the wagon is not my issue. The tough part for me, I'd been eating fish and fowl probably for 30 years. The tough part for me was giving up chicken. Gosh, I love those wings, and that is readily available. During the pandemic, though, my wife and I really decided we're going to give up the bird, the yard bird. And because the data is pretty clear that, the pure plant-based diet is what contributes to longevity and to good health outcomes. And since we weren't willing to go all the way vegetarian yet, giving up chicken was the next step. So I think if doing it incrementally is an option, that makes it a whole lot easier. And now as I travel, all the fine dining establishments have very good vegetarian and outstanding pescatarian options. So right now, staying on the wagon is easy. I think that next phase, when we completely go vegetarian or plant-based, as I like to refer to it, is going to be a little more challenging, but we'll see.
So during this journey, have you begun to feel better?
The first thing I noticed is that back in probably the 80s, when I gave up beef, is that I lost 2 inches off my waistline immediately. And I thought that was fantastic. I didn't feel a whole lot different, but, I began to look a lot different. And of course, I increased my exercise regimen at the same time. So that helped. But now, relative to a lot of my peers, my age, I think I am more mobile, more flexible, and relatively speaking, feel better. So I must attribute that to the diet, since I clearly don't have the genes for longevity.
So what have you encountered some sort of practical hurdles? Finding the markets that you want, finding the restaurants that you want, and also a price. You talked about fine dining restaurants have got everything that you would want, but not everybody can afford fine dining. So is price a potential hurdle for folks who are looking to go on at least a plant-based diet or pescatarian diet?
Yeah, I don't think price is the issue. Convenience is the issue, because when you shop, it's a lot easier if you just are a bacon and eggs kind of guy to find dining options, especially at breakfast. Surprisingly, breakfast seems to be the biggest challenge in terms of being plant-based. But I don't think price is the obstacle, particularly if you shop, around the edges of the store, which is where all the healthy products are, and leave out the meat. Your total bill is going to be less, but you'll have to go more frequently, because of freshness and being willing to actually be a little more selective. So yeah, I think the challenge and the trade-off is not price, it's convenience.
And for folks who are watching and beginning this journey, what are some tips that you can give to them so that they can at least begin the journey and stay with it?
Well, I really think it's important to have a partner in this whole thing. And again, my wife is my partner, my best friend, and that we are able to reinforce and encourage each other. The other is you have to be open to trying new things. As a kid, there were certain vegetables that I didn't like. I didn't like Brussels sprouts, for example, the way they were prepared by my mom, and I didn't eat a lot of cauliflower. And now those are staples in my diet. And the way foods are prepared are a lot different now than they were when you and I were growing up. And so some of the foods that we wouldn't have liked then, we like now, just because they're prepared differently, they're fresher, and they aren't cooked to death the way they were back in the old days in the Deep South. So I think having a partner, being open and willing to change. And really, if you believe the data, if you're a data-driven person and you do any kind of research at all, it's clear that health outcomes and long, healthy living is a direct proportion to what you eat. And as you said at the beginning, you are what you eat. And so if you believe the data and you want to live long and healthy, then it's really no choice.
It's not just the Deep South. I grew up in New England, and probably the first 15, 20 years of my life, the only asparagus I ever had came out of a can. And,
yeah.
Well, there's no wonder that I didn't like asparagus, or those green beans that came out of the can, or those lesser peas that came out of the can. I don't think I had a fresh pea until I was in my mid-20s, and there really is a great big difference in taste. And if it tastes better and it is better, then why not do it?
Exactly. It's tough too, though, when others around you are enjoying that prime rib and that steak and that pork chop, and it smells so good. But if you can go about 7 weeks, people say once you go 7 weeks, you developed a habit. And for me, it wasn't a matter of tapering off. When I gave up chicken, for example, during the pandemic, it was that cold turkey stop, hard stop. And that was a little easier, quite frankly, than I thought it would be.
So, Tony, in talking to you about this, I just get a sense of a certain kind of personal joy that you seem to enjoy just because you've been able to go on this journey and be successful in it.
Well, for me, as I said before, I'm data driven and I'm goal driven, and there are a lot of tools out there that kind of help give you encouragement and points actually for good behavior. One of them is an app called the Daily Dozen, which is developed by Dr. Michael Greger, who is the owner of nutritionfacts.org. And what they do is that they scan the globe for all of the gold standard studies around nutrition, and they publish what's best for you based on fact. And then they list items for you to eat and put it in this app. And if you follow that app, you get points, you get credit for it. And so it kind of makes dieting fun and it's self-motivating. And I do feel good about myself, quite frankly, for being able to achieve what I believe is a pretty difficult task. Because we all know what we ought to do, but none of us are doing it. So I feel a little bit superior in that regard.
In a moment, we'll have some tasty ideas on how to put what Tony's been talking about into absolute practice. Nikki Shaw is next. Chef Nikki Shaw. Before we get to those tasty little morsels that you had cooking on with some of your Instagram videos, let's get basic about this. What do you tell people who are trying to eat more healthy? What's the advice that you give to them?
Well, okay, so first of all, we have to wrap our mind around that's our goal. That's really important to set the intention, because sometimes people are like, they go into it like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to hear about it. When I go into cooking demonstrations, I have to kind of encourage people to look at the benefits, like look at how much you're about to improve your life and the people in your life. So I think that's a big part that a lot of people don't address. We have to set the intention that this is what we want to do. This is our goal. And we want to be successful and achieve this goal. So after we get past that hump, and that's a big one.
Sure. Attitude is everything, right?
Attitude is everything.
Now, suppose I can't go straight to a plant-based diet. Are there some good intermediate steps that I can take?
Everything we do is a choice. And you don't have to go straight plant-based if you don't want to. But it's also important to understand what exactly are the options and what it means. So just overall, vegetarians on average are 25% less likely to die from heart disease. We know that heart disease is the biggest killer in the world. So just that statistic alone, and I'll repeat it because sometimes it takes you a minute to hear what I'm saying. 25% on average are less likely to die from heart disease, with heart disease being the biggest killer in the United States. So just to understand, a vegetarian diet means that vegetarians may eat cheese, eggs, milk, but they do not eat meat such as chicken, pork, and beef. Instead of meat, they lean on plant-based protein. Now, that's the traditional vegetarian diet. A vegan, however, is a different kind of diet. That means people choose to forgo animal products altogether, including milk, cheese, and honey, and exclusively eat plants as part of a vegan lifestyle. Now, it takes some real discipline to live a vegan lifestyle, but we have other options. We have a pescatarian diet, which refers to a vegetarian diet with the addition of seafood. And plant-based foods such as fruits, vegetables, beans, whole grains, nuts, seeds, and seafood provide your protein and your omega-3 fatty acids. And finally, and this is where I fall into this section right here, a flexitarian diet. And that just means that some people are more flexible and they try to simply cut down on their meat intake and eat diets that are primarily filled with plants, but with some animal products here and there.
Nikki, we all fall off the wagon. We don't always achieve our goals in a straight line fashion. If we do fall off the wagon, what are some of the intermediate or some of the recipes that we can begin to try to get back to our goal?
I always encourage everybody, give yourself some grace. We're all trying to figure it out in this beautiful world that we're living in.
A lot of people think that these pescatarian and flexitarian diets and plant-based diets are just bland. How do you make them more tasty?
What I've found that I really enjoy adding to my food is lemon juice, lime juice, grapefruits. Citrus really makes food pop. It really brightens it up and gives you a whole extra layer of flavor. And then, we can always count on fresh garlic, green onions, thyme, rosemary, all those fresh herbs. And sometimes people are intimidated by fresh herbs, but that really brightens up the flavor of everything. So I encourage people to really experiment with herbs and seasonings and citrus and even mangoes or tomatoes, just adding things in that you typically wouldn't try.
Sounds terrific. So tell us a little bit about this incredible salmon dish that you're going to cook up for us.
So salmon is one of my most favorite go-to dishes in the world. We're making a delicious recipe with Creole salmon and pineapple skewers. I know you're gonna love it. So before we get started, we're gonna take our 10-inch wooden skewers and we're gonna soak them in water for about 30 minutes. And I'll add some water, and this will prevent our skewers from burning. I'll take my skinless salmon fillet and I'll use the thick portion of the fillet and I'll cut it into 2-inch chunks. Next, I'll lay my salmon in the pan and I'll pour 1 cup of Tony's Creole style seafood marinade on top. I'll cover my pan and let it refrigerate for about 30 minutes. While the salmon is marinating, we'll cut up our fresh pineapple. Now you can cut it up yourself, or you can buy pre-cut pineapple in your produce department at your local grocery store, or you can use canned pineapple. Cut each slice of your pineapple into 2-inch chunks. Next, I'll cut up my red bell pepper into 2-inch squares. I want the pieces to be nice and uniform because that makes the end product look nice. Okay, so my salmon has been marinating for 30 minutes in the refrigerator. I've cut my fresh pineapple into 2-inch pieces, and I've also cut my red bell pepper into 2-inch pieces. I like for everything to be around the same size so that it cooks evenly. Now we're ready to assemble our skewers. So we'll start to thread our salmon first. We'll slide that down the 2 skewers. Then we'll grab a nice piece of red bell pepper, slide that down to meet the salmon. Then we'll grab a chunk of pineapple and another piece of bright red bell pepper. Come back again with a nice thick piece of salmon, another piece of red bell pepper, another chunk of pineapple, red bell pepper again, and we'll finish it off with a nice piece of salmon right on top, just like that. Okay, I've covered my pan with foil. Now I'm going to spray it with nonstick spray. That makes cleanup easy. And I will place my skewers right on my pan. I'll preheat the oven to broil. I'll take my fresh lemon juice and squeeze it all over the top. Next, I'll take about a half teaspoon of Tony's Bold Creole seasoning and sprinkle it right on top. Try adding other vegetables to your skewers like onions, zucchini, or even mushrooms. I'll let that broil for about 10 to 12 minutes until they're done. All right, so I'm gonna plate it. Oh, this looks so good. It's been cooking for about 10 to 12 minutes and it looks amazing. This is a great meal all by itself, or you can serve it on a bed of Tony's Creole butter and herb rice. Either way, you're gonna love it. For this recipe and more, go to cuisinenoirmag.com and tonysacherie.com. Enjoy.
Chef Nikki Shaw, as always, it's a pleasure to be in your company. We're really grateful that you're able to, and honored that you share your expertise with us. You're going to help millions of people just sort of get over the hump of how do I start and how do I continue and how do I reach my goals of eating healthy. Nikki, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you guys for everything you're doing. We appreciate you for making a difference in our community. So thanks for having me. Take care.
Nikki, you're much too kind. Thank you for being with us. And thanks to Tony Harris for joining us as well and sharing his story. Remember, you can get all of this good information about how to eat a more healthy diet on our website, aawellnessproject.org. That's aawellnessproject.org.